Aloha! So this is a project that I'm going to be talking about and do a video for. This is a Squier Bullet Stratocaster by Fender. I bought this about 2009, and from the work that I've done online, searching out various subjects, is that it was built in China and probably around 2007, 2008. I bought it locally here in Hilo, and I paid about $140 for it back then. I got pretty lucky because this guitar has a really great neck. The craftsmanship was really good. The frets, everything polished very nicely. The workmanship is excellent, which is pretty rare for some of these. So I've enjoyed it, practicing on it for the last 9-10 years, and then I'm going to do some upgrades, and then we'll listen to it later. The box is well packed. Here's our parts. Here's our parts list. Let's take a look and see what we have. These are the new Trucoil improved noise canceling Kwikplug ready. There's our new Pickguard. Here's our new tremolo system with a much more substantial steel block. Here's my capo. Ordered a capo too. But here's our Kwikplug system. With our 250K pots. So each wire has a little plug. Got an input jack. Everything's here. I'm going to start out by installing this solid steel chrome tremolo block from Guitar Fetish. This is called a solid steel block Shorty Squier and import compatible 10.5mm chrome tremolo. So this Shorty block will fit the cavity of the Squier Bullet, and you're going to see that it's substantially heavier and larger than the original pot metal that came with the Squier Bullet. And included is the springs and the tremolo bar. Look at the difference in weight between the Squier block and the Guitar Fetish block. 5.75 ounces. And 10.65. I removed the cover on the backside of the guitar to access the tremolo spring system. Next, I removed the existing springs, and you'll notice that there is what appears to be a ground lead right here, so I don't want to remove that. Then I removed the 6 screws that hold the tuning system in place. Okay, let's drop this Guitar Fetish steel block down into the cavity. And you can see that it fits perfectly. Okay, next we want to start tightening up the screws. Fender's instructions for installing a floating tremolo is to insert the screw and take it all the way down until the bridge starts to rock. And then back it off until it's flat. So that's what I'm going to do for the rest of them. Take it all the way down until the bridge starts to rock. Like that, and then take it back. And it's installed now, but we still have to work on the springs. I don't really see a big difference between the original spring bracket and the new one from Guitar Fetish. This already has the ground wire soldered, so I might have to remove it or cut this, I don't know yet. But I think I'm just going to leave it in, something less to have to deal with. And I still haven't really decided whether I'm going to block this up or leave it as a floating bridge. But for now, we'll put the springs in using the existing bracket, and I have this one if I need it. Guitar Fetish provided 4 springs. I think I'm going to install 3, like the way Fender shows the installation. I can always put this back to 4, or I can add 4 instead of the 3. If anybody knows why it might be a good idea to have all 4 springs, let me know. This is a little bit trickier than I thought it was going to be. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to back out the screws on this bracket so that there won't be quite as much tension on the spring. And then tighten this up later. These screws are quite long. Okay, let's see what that does. Okay, that was a little better. Let's see if we can get the rest of these in. Next on the list is this set of Fender 70s F-style guitar tuning machines. This is a chrome set of 6, and this is a genuine Fender replacement part. These F-style guitar tuning machines are the split post style, if you can see that. I'm also going to be replacing the Squier nut and the string tree with these products by Tusq, self-lubricating products, and this should work out well too. Okay, so here's the old tuners. I'm going to take these off. It's a Phillips tip screwdriver head, and I'm going to take these off, and hopefully these the new tuners, the F-style, is going to fit into the holes, and but I'm probably going to have to do some modifications and probably drill more screw holes for the new set, but we'll see how it goes. These pressure inserts here can be removed easily with the end of a drill bit. That's how I did it. Okay, so just take a drill bit that's approximately the same size and just push it in. It's really easy, and they just push right out like that. There we go. Okay, well, these holes just aren't quite large enough for both these inserts and for the actual tuning machine. So I'm going to have to enlarge these holes, carefully enlarge these holes, and then you're going to also see that the screw patterns. I'm going to have to drill some new holes, but shouldn't be too difficult. I just need to be careful not to enlarge too much. We'll see what kind of bits I have. I might use a step bit on each side and see how that goes. I use a step bit, or what they call unibit, to carefully remount the hole to the sizes for both the insert and for the machine side of the tuners. The size that I actually needed was 3/8, so I marked the step bit with a piece of tape and went around to both sides of the headstock. And boy, these step bits have come in so handy on many different projects. I have a couple different ones. Okay, now the hole fits perfectly on both sides. And these can be tapped in or pressed in, which I'll do now. Okay, so then I just use a small hammer wrapped in cloth and just gently tap these inserts in. I lined up all the new tuners, and then there was a couple of holes that I could use, and then I drilled small pilot holes for the remaining screws, being really careful by marking, making sure that I don't go drill in too far, but came out nice. The next thing I'm going to do is knock this old nut out and then replace it with the new Tusq self-lubricating nut. But before that, I did go through and polished up this fretboard. I rounded the edges and the fret wires themselves a little more. Let's see if I can get a better focus here. And then here's some of the tools that I used. Various fret files, sanding blocks, and then I use fingernail buffing pads for the finish work. They seem to work out pretty good, and I guess if I were doing mini guitars, I'd buy more cost-effective tools from some of the luthier shops, but this works out. And I mentioned earlier that this Bullet's fretboard was actually really well done. For normally the fret wires could be a little bit sharp and the edges a little bit sharp, but this particular Bullet was really well done. But now we need to loosen this nut up. To remove this nut, the first thing I'm going to do is score all around the nut with this X-Acto knife to try to break away any glue on the edges or varnish. I don't see a lot of varnish, but you don't want that hanging on and pulling away part of the neck or other parts. Also, I did make a special little tool out of a chopstick, so I just cut it down so it fits the size of the nut, and I'm just going to tap all the way around it. And hopefully there won't be a lot of glue. You don't really need a lot of glue to keep these nuts in. In fact, when I put the Tusq back in, I'm just going to use a drop of maybe some super glue or maybe even just wood glue. Really doesn't need a lot of glue. You want to just make little taps. You're just trying to break it free. I just broke it free. You can see that it came out nice and clean. There wasn't hardly any glue used. This is really was a good job that they did on this. And I can use this old nut to kind of check the new nut. So I'm just going to go in there and maybe just lightly sand the area and just make sure that it's nice and flat, and then get ready to put in the new self-lubricating Tusq nut. Now I'm going to take a little fingernail file and just go in and just clean the channel up just slightly. Just make sure that there's no glue or anything in there. So here's the Tusq nut, and you can see that it just fits right in there. There is a little molding part that I'm going to need to take off. You know, maybe I'll try the X-Acto knife and then But you can see it just fits the slot perfectly. But I'm going to need to sand that. So I'll just take and run this on the sand block really nicely. And this is just going to fit perfectly. I'm really impressed with this. Now it's a little long, so I'm going to have to sand these sides a little bit. I'm going to do that. But man, this I'm impressed with this. This is exactly the same size as the old nut. So I'll just use this as a guide. The old nut is a guide for the sanding. And then we'll come back and we'll glue this in. Oh, fits right in there. Okay. Now to start sanding these sides. And I've gone in and marked with a pencil using the old nut as a template. I'll use a coarser side. You want to be careful, you don't want to take too much off. I'm rounding a little bit. Check often. Just a little bit more. Almost there. Check with the old nut. And then I definitely want to round these edges off. I don't want any sharp corners. But I also don't want to do it too much. That's just about perfect. I'm going to go in now with some fingernail sanding and polishing blocks and finish this up. I don't want it sharp on the edges, so I'm going to just make sure that's nice and smooth. Buff it, shine it up. Clean this out. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just add a couple of little tabs of this tacky glue. I mean, you could use Carpenter's glue or whatever, but just a couple little tabs. That's actually quite a bit. Take some of that off. You don't need a lot of glue, and the strings are going to keep it in. So get that in there. and let that dry. That way if I need to knock it out and put another one in, it'll be easy. Okay, the nut is in place. We'll let that dry. You just make sure it's in good. Some people string up the guitar, but I'm just gonna make sure it's pressed in, let it dry. Clean up anything that I need to clean up. And then next step before moving on is going to be adding this nut tree, also by Tusq. So I'm sure it's going to be a great product, just like the nut was. And boy, we're almost done now. Then I can go ahead and put the strings on and see how this sounds. Here are the string trees that I screwed into the existing holes where the other ones were. And before that I had to do a little bit of sanding and polishing using a fingernail file and a buffing pad, but didn't take much. And this should be really good for the strings. On to installing the new wiring harness. This is also from Guitar Fetish. This is a Kwikplug premium harness. VTT 5-way switch, 250K pots. Black and white cloth push-back wires. Also a removable output jack. So this is the Kwikplug system from Guitar Fetish. And then these are the new Trucoil improved noise canceling Kwikplug ready. And this is the Texas set. So hopefully this will sound great. I've got 3 of them. I'm replacing the ones that came with the Bullet. Of course, I'm keeping everything. You never know. When Strats and Gibsons first came out, they were all inexpensive, and later on people loved the old stuff, so it's a good idea to save all your parts. You never know. And these parts are all going to be wired into my new pickguard, also from Guitar Fetish. I'll start removing all the screws on the pickguard and those holding the input jack in. Now I don't believe we're going to need to remove all the screws that are going to the pickups. I think all we need to do is remove the volume and tone knobs and the switch knob, and I think this will all pull out as one unit, so we'll find out in a second. Okay, and that just lifts out as one unit. Although we are going to have to remove some wires here. There's the pickups that came with this Bullet. Take off the input jack cover. So I should be able to replace everything with my new wiring harness that I got from Guitar Fetish and just attach everything to the new pickguard. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so you're going to notice that I removed the input jack that was with the old guitar. I'll use the new one from Guitar Fetish in the wiring harness. I also cut the ground wire, and then I was able to remove everything completely. What I am going to do though here is before I start in on wiring up the input harness and the pickups to the new pickguard, I have some foil tape, and I'm going to go in and do a little more shielding in here, even though there's quite a bit of this black shielding paint inside the cavity, which is good. Can't hurt to put a little more shielding inside. The other thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure that the pickguard actually fits perfectly, and I can see already that it doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to need to take a Dremel. That's what I'm going to use. You could use a file, but I'm just going to use a Dremel, and I'm going to carefully take off some of this material and then make sure that I've got a little bit of tolerance so that I can get the pickguard to fit the screws, or if necessary, the screw holes, or if necessary, I may need to drill some new holes. But I think if I give myself a little more tolerance, that the pattern that they have on this new pickguard is going to work. I mean, it's pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and do those two things first. I'll put the copper shielding in a little more, and then I'm going to use a Dremel and take care of some of this material that needs to be removed. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. I got a few extra pieces to put in and smooth it all out. By the way, I've been using a pencil eraser and this dowel that is actually a leather working tool, but just anything to kind of smooth it out. In fact, I'm going to put a few more pieces of tape in here and then smooth it out. It already had the shielding paint in there, but this ought to really help it out. And I'm also in certain areas wrapping up so that I may put some on the pickguard, and there'll be contact between the cavity and up on the pickguard. So it should help. Okay, I'm going to start smoothing everything out. Make sure everything is stuck down really good. And Make sure to put your copper tape in a plastic bag, otherwise it'll oxidize. So anyway, that's what I do. So next we start trimming the pickguard. I used a couple different Dremel bits, and I was able to just shave a few areas on this pickguard. And now it's fitting pretty good. You can see that most of these screws are fitting, but I have maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe 2 or 3 that I'm going to have to re-drill, but everything else seems to fit pretty well. So now we're going to wire up the harness to the pickguard and then move on. I'm going to start adding the pickups to the pickguard using the provided screws from Guitar Fetish. They're spring loaded so that you can adjust the height. The provided pickup cover fit just fine. Okay, we've got them all in. So you can see that everything is wired up nicely, and they fit into the slot for the slider switch and also for the potentiometers. Everything fits. And they provide locking nuts for the final assembly. Okay, I tightened up these nuts with a small wrench, and then you'll notice that each one of the pickups have a little plug, and these are going to plug into the volume and tone pots here. And then we have the input jack. So I just need to figure out what goes where, and this is almost ready to go back into the guitar. And you'll notice that this is set up for the Kwikplug system, or if you were to need to solder this into some other type of a system, you have the option so that these pickups can be quickly changed out using the Kwikplug system. Okay, here's how the Guitar Fetish Kwikplug system works. First of all, once you get your pickups into the pickguard, just remove these wires, these extra wires that they give you. Okay. And then just take a look at the harness. Okay. It's logically created. The longest wires are going to reach to the furthest pickup. Okay, here's the second longest. It goes to the middle. And then here's the shortest. It's going to go down here. Now, the other way to look at it is just take a look at the switch. Okay, this is your neck pickup. Okay, and if you look at what's going on here, you'll see that the neck is pointing to these connectors down here. There's the bridge. It's up here, neck. It rotates down here. So with the neck, we take the longest wires, which are these, and we plug in to the neck pickup. Okay. Then we take the second longest wire, and we can also rotate around and see that that goes to this pickup, the middle pickup, leaving our shortest wire assembly going to our bridge pickup right here. And that makes sense because here's our bridge pickup. So now we're all wired up. And then we'll just take this ground wire and we'll plug this or solder this into the tremolo claw, like the original setup was. So before I put this all together, the next thing I have to do is I need to take this grounding wire that's on this volume pot, and I'm going to have to run it through the body and into the spring claw and solder it there. So there's a hole right there from the previous one. The other thing I need to do is I need to disconnect this line that's going to this tone pot. I need to disconnect this, and then I need to wire up my input jack. So this comes off. This is going to go into this hole here, but it doesn't go all the way through. It's just a little bit too small. So I'm going to need to take my Dremel tool or a drill and just enlarge this just a little bit. It just almost goes through, but it needs a little more of an enlargement. And then once I get that through, I'll connect it back up and then bolt this back onto my input jack cover, and then we're ready to test it out. I'm just about ready to put this all together. However, take a look. You'll notice that I did totally enclose the pickguard with copper foil tape. There was aluminum foil tape on the Guitar Fetish pickguard, but I read a lot of online forums and also some videos that said to do this. In fact, there are some that showed complete tapings in between the pickups, but there was some debate as to whether that might alter the sound of the pickups. I don't know. But they do have commercially made foil cutouts to put onto your pickguard. So I figured, with all the various people that have commented about this, that I would go ahead and enclose all this. And also you'll notice that I made sure that I have a bit of tape extending over, and so that it will make contact. And I even have some screw holes that are taped up. Even the input jack I have that set up. And I've trimmed any tape that might have been sticking out over the side. So I don't know. We're going to find out, how it works, whether I need it, but there was plenty of musicians that played at various venues saying that there's all kinds of interference from TV sets, from bad wiring to all kinds of things that can be picked up by the pickups and other parts of your harness. So why not do it? Why not go in and do it? I don't know if it works. These are noise canceling pickups, so hopefully that'll help out a lot also. Now we'll plug the input jack wire into the tone pot, into the quick connector. Make sure it's in there good. And we'll turn everything around. And then I need to thread this ground wire through the hole, which I can't really show you here. Well, here we go. Right here, I have to thread it through there. I have to replace this wire and solder this back into here. We're going to remove the old wire from the spring claw. And then we're going to solder in the new wire. So I carefully put everything in the cavities. I had to gently bend a couple components, but very gently. I just pressed it in. Now I'm going to put a few screws in. I'm not going to put them all in, just in case. And I'm also going to only put like one string on to test it out. So for now, I'm just going to put in a few screws. I may need to drill a couple of screw holes too that are just a little off, but for right now, we'll just put a few in and get it locked into place. According to Fender, 2/3 of their guitars, their Strats made after 1980, have a 9.5-inch fretboard radius. And I checked, and sure enough, that's what this bullet is. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to try to adjust the bridge so that it matches that before I start putting strings on. And then I'm going to put one string on, going to make a diddly bow, and check the electronics, see if this works. Okay, so I've gone through and made some adjustments using both the Phillips tip on these back screws and then also the Allen wrench. And you just got to be real careful. And then, making a rough adjustment. I'm sure I'm going to have to do a lot of adjustments for the setup. This is a fretboard radius gauge. I've got a set of them, and this is really handy for doing all kinds of work. You can get this at a Luthier Supply, Stu Mac, many different ones, online, Amazon. Okay, let's see what happens when we put a string on this. Well, the moment of truth, let's see what happens. I put on the D string. I've got it tuned. Let's see if this works. Oh, it's working. Let's try the switch. to string the rest of it up, I'm using tins, set of tins, Ernie balls, and the sustain is like really good. So can't wait to get them on and get everything set up and stretched and set the pickup heights properly and see how this works out. Probably got maybe a pickup a little bit too close, but we'll see. Well, if you're still watching, thank you. And here it is. It took a few days and a lot of research online to learn everything that I needed to do, but hopefully this will help you out. And if I can do it, you can do it. I learned a lot, made a few mistakes, but this sounds really good. I couldn't have hoped for a better outcome. I'm going to use this as my slide guitar. You can see that I do not have the tremolo arm. Now I did make another video with a before and after so you can hear what the before sounded like and the after. This has a lot more punch to it. It's got hotter pickups. The other ones were a little more swampy, which weren't bad, but I wanted the hotter, clearer sound. And if I want that swampy sound, I'll use pedals or more gain or something. But again, very happy with the way this turned out. And if you like this, you enjoyed it, please comment, like, subscribe, and take a look at the other video if you want to see how it sounds. Until the next project, see you later.